Ugh, my heart. My cynical, icy heart. It's melting. Too much hype. Too much hype. Seriously, was the Sony conference even real? Let's just go down the list of highlights that happened in a night full of stunning moments. Last Guardian, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Horizon Zero Dawn, No Man's Sky, Shenmue 3, and to top it all off, somehow they managed to even steal Call of Duty from Microsoft. Just pack it up. Go home, guys. Don't even bother trying again next year because Sony just won every E3 ever. By the way, I just want to point out, I was a part of the PlayStation experience this year, and yes, seeing Dreams on the big screen was pretty unforgettable. But that's something I want to compensate for when I'm talking about Sony in particular. Like, I can feel it, okay? I'm a little bit lightheaded right now. I'm still elated off of that show, so I want to make sure I compensate for that a little bit. I want to make sure I'm not biased towards anyone in particular. So how I'm going to do that is I might come across a bit more cynical with some of these games on an individual basis than I was with some of the other companies. And don't get me wrong, like I said, they had a fantastic show overall, but as for each one of those by themselves, well, let's hop into it. Why does the Monty Python skit come to mind when I'm thinking of this first game? I'm not dead! Said everybody on the Ico team when they showed off that yes, The Last Guardian is in fact still happening. They knew, okay? Sony had to have known. It's like, yes, this is the only way we can start off the show this year. This will let everybody know, get their attention, and tell them we mean business in 2015. We're not taking any prisoners anywhere, okay? And, well, okay, I want to voice the opinions of some of the people out there because I definitely noticed a couple of these things when I was watching it myself. Number one, it kind of does look like a PS3 game. Like, don't get me wrong, the aesthetic makes up for a lot of that. Like, you don't need fantastic high-resolution textures in that game because it looks so beautiful to begin with. It's got that not painted style, not washed out either. This, I guess I could describe it as bright. Artful and bright is how all of the Team Ico or Eco, however you want to pronounce it, games look. And it still works. It still looks good in this day and age. What kind of bugged me about the presentation they did, though, was... how do I describe this? It's like watching a Let's Play of somebody who's not really that good at a game you've played a million times before. Like, you know exactly what you would do in every situation. You know how to get through it the best way possible, and they're just kind of wasting time. I knew what to do in that scenario before that guy even got up to that eye. Like, when the bird, eagle, dog thing, the Guardian itself, if you will, started reacting badly to that sigil, that thing on the wheels that made its eyes turn red and made it whine and back off, I was like, turn around, you dummy, go get rid of it. But he just stood there, like, trying to call it over, like, hey, come on, it's not that bad. And he's just like, screw you, dude, I'm not going over there. It's like, come on, I get it, your game is cinematic and it's beautiful. And I want to see more of it, but let me experience that kind of thing myself. You don't need to set up the moment, just stop insulting my intelligence and just go do it. And it also kind of took a lot from a lot of the luster of it because I was hearing the same sound effects over and over again, like the boy calling to the Guardian. And it was the same like 2 or 3 canned phrases over and over again. And man, am I the only one who felt like the cries of that thing were kind of ear-splitting? They weren't a whole lot of fun to listen to, and again, maybe it was the theater speakers that were projecting them to me, but that thing isn't very fun to listen to when it's not happy, let's put it that way. But I'm sure number one, it's The Last Guardian. Like, the fact that this game has been elevated out of, like, Half-Life 3, Beyond Good and Evil 2, Duke Nukem Forever territory of games that everybody wants but have become obvious that are never going to happen under any circumstances. Well, except for Duke Nukem Forever, but then we've got the argument some people make that maybe that shouldn't have happened, but that's a topic for another day. The fact that it's now been confirmed to still be in development, it's out of development hell, that alone justifies this entire trailer's existence. It kind of makes anything that might have gone wrong from a personal opinion standpoint kind of a moot point, because it's The Last Guardian, it's Team Eco, and they're working on what they want to work on again. We know they're working on this now. And a lot of that'll solve itself out too when you're actually playing the game yourself. Like, you will make those kinds of decisions, and it won't feel quite that frustrating anymore. You'll experience the beauty on your own terms. So I can't hold that against the game too much. It was a good showing. Now let's talk about a prediction I actually got correct. So, Guerrilla Games showed off their new RPG, and, well, I think just on the virtue that they're working on something that isn't Killzone now is enough to make it worth being excited over, at least a little bit. And we also got that leaked artwork not too long ago, which, compared to that, it's got the same sort of appeal to it. And what I mean by that is, instead of your character looking like a guy in a medieval suit of football armor, now your character is a badass archer who hunts down robotic dinosaurs. I mean, what else do I need to say? Sign me up. I love this world because it's got this... How do I describe it? A lot of post-apocalyptic settings have this... They forget to take advantage of color. They're very washed out. They're dead lands, pretty much. Wastelands of nothing. Like, you'll get a hill every now and again, and maybe there's some ruins of old buildings, but there's no green, there's no blues. Even the sky seems to be a constant shade of just dust storm, like, off brown, pale, dirt color. And this world has color. It's got greens, it's got blues, it's got yellows, a sunset, all kinds of cool stuff because of the robo-animals that are everywhere. The way their eyes light up when they sense danger, and the way they run away, they have those fuel canisters on their back that are all kinds of fantastic hues. But it also looks like it plays really well, too. It's got this element. What I love about this setting in particular is it's a post-apocalyptic world where nature actually took its course. It feels like a merging of science, or of science and nature. I was going to say science and technology, which is kind of a given, but it somehow makes what would usually be portrayed as these ideas that are completely opposite sides of a spectrum together, and they make it make sense in a lot of ways. And of course, like I was saying, it plays great. The idea that it's not an RPG where you level up per se, they might be going for more of a Tomb Raider. Again, they haven't confirmed any of this, but from what I'm seeing, maybe they're going for more of, like I said, a Tomb Raider style upgrade system for this, where skill is the primary deciding factor. You can get upgrades for your bow. You can get all these different kinds of arrows that will have specific effects on what you're shooting at, but it's all about knowing where to put those arrows, like sliding underneath the creature so you can hit its battery pack with an electric shock, or hitting the joint between a leg so that you can cripple it and make it easier to hit a soft spot. That kind of thing really appeals to me. It gives it this undeniable layer of coolness to it, at least for somebody who likes action games like I do, who likes the idea that he could take that. They had that huge fight in that battle, but if you know what you're doing, you could probably take that thing down in only 3 arrows. It's all about playing the game to learn the game to beat the game, and hey, that's how I was raised. I grew up on the Super Nintendo. That kind of thing is right up my alley, so yeah, Horizon Zero Dawn. Hey kids! Guess what time it is? Yep, time for another franchise that Fnu never experienced when he was your age. I don't know what it is about Hitman. Like, maybe it was too real to me. Like, the idea of playing as a hardened killer just seemed way too distant. Like, I was kind of doomed from the start because I'd never be able to relate to the character. But now that I'm older and wiser, I realized that the premise of the series is actually pretty interesting. I think Square Enix has since come out and just flat out said, yeah, this is going to be like the earlier games in the franchise where you have options. Like, you could just straight up play it as an action game if you like, where you gun everybody down and take out your target that way. I mean, you'll get a way lower rank, but hey, it's a viable strategy. Or you could feel like the Master Assassin that the game wants you to feel like, and you can go through all of these different steps, like get a disguise, drop a chandelier on a guy, poison his cigar, or take away his drugs and make him dig through his suitcase until he cinematically finds the bomb that you planted there. At least I think that's what was happening in that trailer. Things were moving a little fast for me to really tell all of the little bitty details, but I think that was a running theme of this year, is franchises that now I'm excited for. I'm starting to realize that there is a lot of value in experiencing everything there is out there, about seeing all of these different genres that maybe you wouldn't necessarily be attracted to if you didn't have a reason to go out of your way and play them. And especially considering I'm becoming a designer myself, and who knows, maybe I'll have something of my own to show off next year, it's more valuable than ever that I start expanding my horizons and getting a better picture of the medium in general. And I think E3 kind of did its job this year in the sense that it's gotten me interested in a lot of franchises. It's given me a reason to actually pick them up finally. So it's just a matter of seeing... Damn dog. I'm sorry if you can hear her howling on the screen. It's making me distracted. What I'm trying to say is, if you're going to learn how to make games right, you need to take a note from the people who have already gotten it right. So let's hope they get it right, right? Street Fighter V, Birdie's now fat and Cammy's butt jiggles. Look guys, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I even know the first thing about fighting games, okay? I couldn't even tell you what the difference is between Street Fighter IV and this game, okay? You want some insight about why this game matters, all the little details behind it, all the things that go into it, go watch Maximilian Dude's video. In fact, I'll put a little annotation around the picture, or I guess if I'm feeling ambitious and want to tempt poking the copyright dragon today, I'll have the actual video up there in the corner, footage of the game. Go listen to him talk about the game, and he can give you a lot more details than I could ever hope to. Now, I was alluding to this game earlier and how it justified me going to the PlayStation experience by itself, but I stand by that, okay? Dreams, the new game by Media Molecule, dude. If there was ever anything that made me believe that the next generation was worth it, that it's going to usher in a new era of graphical fidelity that we just could not achieve before, it was that scene with the guy on the speeder bike getting shot and all of that smoke coming out the back. The fact that this thing looks like a 3D watercolor painting, this very Raphael, Michelangelo, I don't know, pick your Ninja Turtle of choice for this one. It would probably be applicable. Come to life, and that's the phrase that they said it. This is another instance of a developer hitting the nail on the head. This is a game about bringing your dreams to life, which Media Molecule's always been good at. They're very good at creating these living worlds, these places that feel like you could build them any way you wanted, make anything come to life. And they harken to the idea to something like a lucid dream. Like, you're conscious that you're dreaming. You know that things aren't quite what they seem, that this is not reality, and things work a little differently here. That pretty much anything could happen, and you can just go from place to place. Thing after thing could happen, and they have absolutely no correlation to one another. And we saw that in the trailer. They said that it takes a while for this to sink in, but no, I totally understand what they were going for. Those lights, that's you. That's your experience, traveling from one of these experiences to the other. And witnessing them all firsthand as they go on, just seeing the possibilities and more that this world is capable of holding, this engine is capable of holding. And they were sculpting it out using the DualShock controls, but you know that's not going to be the only option. You know they're going to give you a more traditional control scheme to work this with, which, coming from somebody who's worked with 3D modeling before, it's a little harder. I understand why they're doing that. It might feel more intuitive to actually work within a 3D space instead of the analog sticks, which can only offer you X and Y to operate in. Coming from somebody who actually is used to working with a mouse with this kind of thing, it might feel a lot more intuitive, but yeah, offer people an option there, because the last game that relied on the DualShock motion controls for their livelihood was Lair, and yeah, lest we forget the lessons they learned off of that. I miss Factor 5. So Firewatch is one of those indie games that came out this year that had A, an interesting aesthetic, and B, an interesting premise. The way this world looks, it's kind of a middle ground between going for a realistic look and going for something that's more cel-shaded, if you will. It looks almost cartoony in a way, like your character is intentionally blocky, his fingers intentionally look a little bit rough, but it gives the world a personality, a visual discrepancy from everything we've seen. And speaking of discrepancy, the story, the idea of this mystery that's going on. Your character is just kind of out here, separated from the rest of the reality. His only contact is this woman over the radio, and they've got this kind of relationship forming between each other. But there is a third person in this equation. Well, three others, technically, but you've got the idea of this person who's wandering around out there, who's sabotaging the communication lines, who's hanging around in your tower, who's making things difficult for you. And you've also got the idea of those two girls that went missing. Did he have something to do with that? Or she? Maybe? We don't know. Could it be one of the girls who's something happened during the trip and they're trying to hide the evidence because they're afraid somebody might try and tell them that it's their fault, that they might get in trouble for it. They're just a stupid kid who's going to extremes when not thinking logically. We don't know. And that's the cool thing about this game, I believe, is it captures both ends of the spectrum that humanity is both fascinated by and afraid of what we don't understand. We're fascinated by this game because we want to know what's going on. We want to know who this person is and why they're doing these kinds of things. But it's also a terrifying game to a degree because it's got that survival element to it. Like I said, you're nowhere even close to what would be considered as somebody who could help you if everything went to hell. There's no police out here. There's nobody who's going to come to save you and help you. You're on your own. And this person is watching you. They seem to always be one step ahead of you. So it's this constant edgy feeling of, is he around that corner? They could be anywhere. So I'm curious. Again, I want to see more. I feel like I've said that a million times now, but this is yet another game that I feel if I had the money and I had the time and I had the energy, I'd like to see more of. God damn it, Square. That was one of the best trolls I've seen in E3 in a long time. They start talking about Final Fantasy and everyone's like, ooh, I know what's coming. And then we didn't get what was coming. And then we did anyway. What was with that company at this year? But we'll talk about that in a second. We'll talk about that way later. And we'll talk about the other game in just a second. For now, I at least want to give its proper due to World of Final Fantasy. It reminds me a lot of the whole Bravely Default situation where they said, yeah, we realized that these old school games that people were attracted to us for in the first place are still viable, they're still good, and we promise to make more of those in the future. This looks like them capitalizing on that. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of Final Fantasy Record Keepers, in the sense that it's trying to evoke this very old school mindset out of players, and it has a lot of those old characters too. Like, I saw the Warrior of Light in there somewhere, and Correct me if I'm wrong, I think I saw lightning briefly as well. I don't know. I'll correct myself at the bottom of the screen if that ends up being incorrect. But it's also got that idea of what type of aesthetic do you like? Do you like the smaller characters who can ride on top of the monsters, or do you like this more Kingdom Hearts style of character who looks a little older, has that teen angst angle going for them, for lack of a better term, and of course the monsters can ride on them, and which, that phrase in particular, I find infinitely amusing because the day I see that girl character trying to heave around a behemoth on her back will make my day happy indeed, but we'll get to there eventually. Also, I want to end this off by saying, I'm sorry, PlayStation Vita owners. I really am. This seems like the year that PlayStation has finally given up on the platform. I mean, at least you're getting this game, which looks like it's going to be good in the first place, but again, it's a JRPG, so maybe that's not a big surprise anyway. But that being said, I don't know, I've got to see more of this. It's one of those things where it's like Bravely Default. You got to be really careful with these types of games because they can go very, very well or very, very wrong. It's one of those things where I'm going to look at the reviews. I'm interested in the concept, but I'm not sold 100% yet. I'm going to watch the reviews, I'm going to talk to a lot of people, read some personal opinions, and then I'll decide if it's the type of thing I'm actually looking for. And then there was only Final Fantasy VII. You know, the crazy thing about seeing this thing in a theater is that you could feel the crowd's energy. Like, some people caught on way earlier than others. Like, I didn't even see the slide at first. My eyes were... Because when you're seeing something for the first time, your eyes are just kind of wandering around the screen. My focus was up in the top right corner, so I didn't realize why everybody was getting so excited at first. But then they got to the Mako reactor, and then I started to catch on to what was going on. It's like, no, don't you do this to me! Don't! But they did, and it seems like a good thing. Like I said, I'm trying to be a little more cynical about this one in a lot of areas, and while the idea of this, it's what I was saying way back in the Microsoft conference with Recore, is that this is a CG trailer, and while the idea of this is really awesome, the idea that they're getting around to this is very, very cool, I've got to sit back and realize something. This is not Squaresoft that's remaking Final Fantasy VII, okay? It's Square Enix. This is not the company that brought us Chrono Trigger. This is the company that brought us Lightning Returns. You follow me so far? This isn't the company that made Final Fantasy VI. This is the company that made Final Fantasy All the Bravest. And not to mention Nomura's on the project too, so everyone who's throwing around that idea that they're hoping this game will get released on July 31st, 2017 for the 20th anniversary, man, I'd like to believe that. I really would, but I don't think it's going to happen. And they've also said, the one thing that worries me about this project now is that they've said that they're not interested in making the exact same game. They want to, like, they wouldn't be doing this in the first place if they were just taking the exact same thing and giving it a fresh coat of paint, which worries me. This is a game that is so precious to so many people on such an incredibly deep level that if they change even the most minute thing, that this guy are sick. Okay? We're in a situation where people would enjoy this game less if Square Enix did something as logical as correcting a typo. This is a game where you cross-dress in one scene and an old man tries to get you in bed with him. This is a game with a snowboarding minigame. Actually, was that the mobile game? I don't even remember anymore. It's been so long since I've been to the arcade, but that's the thing. It's weird. It's strange. It's a game where your party is made of a talking dog, a dude with a machine gun for an arm, a cat with a crown and a megaphone riding this giant tub of lard everywhere he goes. I don't want them to change anything is the weird part. And I don't think anyone else does either. But and I don't think we can trust them either. There's so much at stake here. And this is a company that has an incredibly different set of ideals than the one that made the original so special in the first place. I need to set the groundwork here. If nothing else, she dies. Okay, don't even touch that. She dies, and there is nothing you can do to save her under any circumstances. Don't frick with me on that front. I want to believe the hype. I want to believe that all that excitement was worth it, but I'm at beyond eyes level of I want this game to work. I want it to be worth all of the excitement everybody was pumping towards it. Just don't let me down, Square. Please, don't let me down. But hey, if that trailer made your jaw hit the floor, this next one sent it to freaking China. Shenmue 3 is happening. I can't even believe I'm saying that. In 1 year, we not only got both of these, we got them back to back. That crowd, I thought a riot was going to break out, okay? I thought those people, that one guy they got a shot of who was like, he had to mentally recover for a second. That was pretty much everyone in that room. Like, they had that countdown and everything. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it's funded. They crashed Kickstarter. Sony broke the website. It got so much traffic coming in to fund Shenmue 3. That is crazy. But, and this is like the last one. This is me being a little more cynical than before. Again, this is something people have wanted for so long. This is something that the creator himself has wanted for so long. Yu Suzuki, a frigging legend of all people. But this is what worries me. This is the thing. I hadn't thought about this until I heard somebody say it. The Shenmue games are open world 3D environments. They've always been some of the most expensive games to produce. They're right up there with Metal Gear Solid on that front. $2 million is not enough to create a game like that these days, with modern design sensibilities, like proper textures, a world that feels cohesive. Are you kidding me? That's not nearly enough to fund the kind of team you need to create something like that. And there are these rumors floating around right now that Sony is actually funding it, like the Kickstarter is just a marketing front. It's to prove to all of their publishers that there is an interest there for something like this and they can get the rest of the funding that way. And if that's not true, well, what are they going to do? Like, they need closer, like 5 times that just to make even a decent 3D open world game. A lot of people don't realize that. It's like, well, you just take everybody's salary to develop the game, you multiply that by how long you think the game's gonna take, and you're good, right? Wrong. Okay? Because of course, as Extra Credits once put it, of course somebody's computer is gonna catch on fire, and then somebody's car is gonna break down, nobody decided to save that data, so you lose a month's worth of work. You just take your best estimates and you add another 50% to them. Games are expensive like that. Because Murphy was right. Again, I want to believe that everybody and everything is on the straight and narrow here, but it's one of those things that's weird. I still haven't backed the game because I want confirmation that everybody's on the straight and narrow with this one, that I'm not being deceived at all. There's just something that doesn't feel right about this whole situation, and I want to get my facts straight before. And this is coming from a guy who just dropped $100 on Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Okay, I'm not opposed to Kickstarter. I want confirmation it's being used correctly. By the way, I'm sorry if I've been a little bit loud during this whole recap, but I feel like I've gone just a tad bit deaf after the Devolver Digital Showcase. Holy cow, that thing was loud in the theater. That beat just bumping right in your face. I could feel that thing in my chest. It was so loud. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on this because they had 4 different games and we saw a little bit of gameplay for each. I just want to talk about the one that really caught my eye, which was Eitir, or however you want to pronounce it, EITR, which I can tell you right now has a Norse inspiration behind it. It's got that very pixel art style that they're good with. This is what I like about Devolver Digital. They don't overextend themselves. Once in a while they'll do something really big, but they've also got a lot of really smaller, dependable ideas that look like very interesting games in their own right. And this one was the most interesting to me because it looks like the way they're handling the combat, it's not just a straight beat 'em up. It's got a very Dark Souls feel to it where every move counts. You've got to dodge around these big hulking behemoths that have massive weapons and you've got to strike them in just the right way. You got to know when to move, where to move, how to attack, what parts of them to attack. And of course it's all wrapped up in this very deep, rich mythology, very cool culture, the whole Viking and Norse thing, the old gods, Thor, Loki, that whole bit. You know what makes me love the PlayStation conference even more? Because it confirmed another one of my predictions. I knew this was going to happen. I knew they were going to talk about Project Morpheus, and I knew they weren't going to have too much to show for it yet. And they had a couple games. Riggs was the one we got the most footage for, but there's also a lot of people seem to be using this for this that type of online arena shooter thing, which I think I might be able to get into in this case simply because I've yet to experience the whole virtual reality thing. I have not gotten my hands on an Oculus Rift or a HoloLens or the Morpheus or anything in that category whatsoever. I haven't even experienced the Google Glasses, which offer you that alternate reality type thing. I'm curious to see what it's actually like. And we've also got that, especially when it's something like World War Toons, I think it was called, that one where everybody's riding around in these weird vehicles shooting like pies and chickens at each other and everything. That looks kind of fun. It looks like a game I can just hop into with a platform like that. However, I was accurate in calling the fact that there's nothing too deep to show off for it yet. It does not yet have that killer app, that one idea, because Microsoft could lean on Minecraft. That's an established game that everybody knows and loves. They had that gigantic demo where everybody saw him like messing with the world, even though apparently it was fake. It was still really fun to watch. It got people looking at the HoloLens. I don't know, I'm kind of torn on this one because the HoloLens showed off something cool, but it's kind of taken away from the fact that it was fake. At least the Morpheus didn't overstay its welcome. I'll say that much. They knew they didn't have a whole lot to show off, so they mentioned it and they move on to PlayStation Vue, which, again, I'm surprised nobody talked about movies this year. That's another thing I was so sure about, that they were going to mention at least one of the films coming out in the coming years, but no, nothing. Instead, we got PlayStation talking about how they're going to be offering whole new televisions sections like HBO and... Okay, be honest with me, did anybody actually know the Machinima channel was a thing? Because I didn't. That came clean out of nowhere. It's one of those announcements where I was looking at the screen like, huh. Well, I didn't know. I'm at least curious about it. I'd like to see what they have on offer now before I make my final judgment on that one, but that's one of those things. It's one of those names you recognize here and you're like, what could come of that? What could they possibly show? So, worth a look? You be the judge. And then we got to the game I was looking forward to the most. At least the one that I knew was going to be at the show for sure. That was No Man's Sky. This thing is right up my alley. This is exactly what I thought it was going to be, and it's exactly what I'm looking for. It's just this almost endless universe. All of these different worlds that have so many things to explore, so many things to see and do, things to upload, upgrading your ship, exploring the entire planet, discovering new species of animals, new structures, entire systems full of places to just continue your journey. It's a game I can hop into and just lose myself for a little while. Not even necessarily try and rush my way to the center of the universe, just explore as much as I can. It's the type of game I'd really like to live stream a lot, just to see what kind of crazy stuff happens on the way. I also called it correctly that they were going to show off pretty much everything. I like how the guy specifically went out of his way to explain that this is a demo where he has no idea what was going to happen. It was a little bit janky. It didn't quite go to plan. And I think that was one of the most earnest things I had seen about it. I can really respect that demo because everything didn't go to plan. He just kind of winged it. He showed off everything he could as quickly as he could, and he said he only had 4 minutes to do it, and you know what, I'm digging it. I'm getting the idea of what the game's all about now, and why I should care. Why it's something that's worth my time. He did his job, so even more so than before. I want a PlayStation 4 just so I could play that game. You mark my word, I'm gonna live up to that. One of those instinctual things every year at E3 is you expect to see Call of Duty at this point. It's gonna pop up somewhere, except we usually expect it in one particular place, the Microsoft conference, because that's where it always is. And I actually saw people freaking out in the chat about this. It's like, wait a minute, why didn't they show off Call of Duty? What's going on? And then some people started to come to the realization, the slow revelation that, wait a minute, if it's not there, there's only one place it could have gone. Sure enough, PlayStation has taken the crown. Call of Duty is now doing all of its early access, the beta, maps come here first nonsense over on the PS4. They won that fight. So now everybody's happy. They showed off indie games. They showed off big games that everybody's always wanted. They announced Dream sequels. And for that particular audience, which is a pretty sizable portion of the audience, even though most of you will never admit it, they showed off Call of Duty. Done. Complete. The net is closed. The circle is whole. Every single market has been covered. This is something... And you know what the weirdest part is? This Call of Duty actually looks fun. I'm not going to lie, there's something about it that I see here that I haven't seen before. I'm looking at all of these different characters that you've got, all of these different abilities they can do, even in the multiplayer. The single player is cool too, because I've heard a lot of people make this comparison with Watch Dogs, is you're basically a technological wizard. The way you can just stop police from chasing you by raising up street barriers, the way you can affect stoplights, you can make an EMP happen in the whole town. You're basically using magic. It's that whole argument that really advanced science is hard to differentiate from magic. They're almost virtually similar. And that's the same sort of thing I'm seeing here. It's come so far into the future, it almost feels like the type of fantasy games that I like. I know how weird that sounds, but I kind of want to play Black Ops 3 just so I can screw around with all of these interesting new weapons and powers that these guys have. It looks very enjoyable. Very, very enjoyable. But it's one of those things where I understand the reputation of the series, and especially the people you're going to meet online, so it's a little lower on that tier list. We got a bunch of stuff to go through on that queue before I pay attention to Black Ops 3, so again, just kind of toss that one over my shoulder for now. That stack's getting almost as big as this chair now. 2 games left to go for Sony, and I tell you what, if you weren't excited to see Disney Infinity, I'll tell you who was. The guy who was showing it off. I'll give him credit for one thing. He really believed in what he was selling, and I think he was exactly the type of person they needed to go up there and talk about Disney Infinity, because it felt like he legitimately believed in it. They needed somebody who needed to fill in that void, because a lot of people have this very apathetic attitude towards Amiibo, towards Skylanders, towards Disney Infinity at this point. They're like, yeah, it's just the same old thing. But he gave it his all. He filled in that void. He made people excited. It's like, you know what, we need somebody who can actually has the energy and the drive to rekindle that interest, to talk about Star Wars and the grandiose nature it deserves, and maybe convert a couple people, maybe make them think, okay, I'll give it one more try. I'll give it a spin, and maybe they'll create some new fans that way. Give that guy a bonus. Definitely give him a bonus, because he made that part way more exciting than it had any right to be. Oh, I'm so sorry, Naughty Dog. I really am. I understand what that type of thing is like. That eats at me. I feel for you guys. Because you're on stage in front of literal millions of people showing off a live gameplay demo, and the character just won't move. Oh, that is the worst. Oh, but past that, once they actually got the character moving again, that was a great audience moment too in that theater. Everybody's going, yay! Oh, but once they actually got it moving again, it's Uncharted, okay? It's gonna be the type of action set pieces that you know and love, that we're used to at this point, and they're just going to be bigger and better. They're always going to do new things. There are always new ways to make a car chase scene interesting. There are always new ways to create an environment that you can explore however you like, to traverse however you like. You want to follow the road? You can do that. You want to take all these side streets? You can do that. You want to be Drake? You can do that. You can do that in this game. I think I've said that quite enough. It's Uncharted, okay? There's nothing more to say past that. It's the same reason I'm looking forward to Rise of the Tomb Raider. It's exactly the same thing we had before, just more of it and better. And in even higher definition this time, so hey, that's all I asked for. So, final thoughts on the Sony conference? Well, gee, I wonder. I mean, the only guys who even came close this year were Bethesda, and it's for the same reasons I mentioned before. They felt like people who were real. They didn't feel like they were trying to push a product. Like, they were actually excited. They actually wanted to be there to show off the things they had so much passion for, and in a way that we could actually get behind, which was showing off a lot of gameplay. But, dude, and I think... And you can use this line wherever you like, because I think it fits so well. Sony made dreams come true this year. Okay, there's no doubt about that. They announced 2 games that people have been waiting almost over a decade for. There's something else that people thought was in development hell. They had that new thing from Media Molecule. They pretty much blew it out of the water. I was on cloud 9 when I left that show. I was on top of the world. I felt like everything I had ever wanted out of a Sony conference happened that night. And even later on, when I was rewatching some of those trailers back at my home on my dinky little computer screen compared to the giant theater, it was still just as cool to know that all of these things were happening. To know that there was nothing more I could have wanted. There was nothing I could have changed. The only way they could have made that conference better is if they announced Half-Life 3. Okay, and that's outside of their realm to be able to promise. I don't think anybody's ever going to be able to top this. Like, I know I've only got about half my predictions right so far, but yeah, this is something that was years in the making. Okay, this was franchises in the making. There was no way. Like, Nintendo could have announced Mother 4 at this year's show. They wouldn't have been able to top this. They could have announced both F-Zero and Metroid Prime 4 at this year's conference. They wouldn't have been able to top this. Okay? Microsoft could have announced that they were abandoning Kinect and announcing that the Xbox One was going to... They pretty much did that. They abandoned the Kinect and they announced backwards compatibility, and they still couldn't top this. Sony just won every E3 ever. And I'm gonna stand by that as long as until somebody proves me wrong. But that's not to say that nobody didn't try. And we're gonna talk about that soon, because now we've got the Nintendo conference to worry about.